Hi everyone, this is Ree. I want to first start off by saying if you like the video of the story I'm going to share with you all and you want to see more, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below and the little bell next to it so you get a notification when I upload something new. And if you like the story that I'm going to share, because I mean, come on, it's pretty funny. So if you decide after you like to watch the video that it's, that you enjoyed it, give me a big thumbs up. That being said, let's begin. So this experience happened back in 2004, and I was living in the northern Midwest of America. I live in America, if you couldn't tell from my accent. Anyway, so at the time, I was living with a couple and their two children, and the two boys were 12 and 2 at the time of this whole disaster. And sorry, I had a thing come in. So we're going to call the mother of the two boys, we're going to call her Twiggy. We're going to call the dad Speedy, and we're going to call the 12-year-old Mr. Rowdy. The 2-year-old, he was just kind of there. Like, he didn't really have much to do with the story. He was 2. He didn't really understand what was going on. So, but nonetheless, he was adorable. So, anyway, so one weekend, I had a couple of days off in a row, which almost never happens. And, so Twiggy and I got talking, and I had gone camping with them at least once before, and we had decided, hey, it would be really fun. The leaves are changing. It's getting crisper outside, and we're both big fall nerds, so, like, let's go camping. And so we had discussed it with Speedy, and he was all for it. So we decided, all right, well, we'll plan to be out of town from like that Friday until like that Sunday or something. And Speedy's parents had a little patch of property out in the northern end of the state, about 3.5 hours north of where we lived. And they were completely cool with us going up there anytime we wanted. Twiggy and Speedy both had a key to the cabin up there. And so you understand a little bit of the layout of the cabin. When I say cabin, I don't mean like a typical log cabin. This was once upon a time a functional mobile home. And Speedy's parents had decided to purchase it during some kind of a home auction or something. I'm not really sure how to describe it. This is a long time before I even knew them. And they had a patch of land up there, so they had the mobile home moved to this patch of land. They never hooked it up to any like functional water or anything like that, so you had to haul the water to heat the place up in the wintertime. Speedy's dad had installed by himself a wood-burning stove, which is totally doable. My grandmother had the same setup when I was a kid. I mean, I am about that rustic life. I love it. I grew up that way. So it was nothing for me to, have to help haul wood in so we could burn it and keep the place warm at night and, cook or whatever. And it was nothing for me to, help haul water. And then, I mean, dude, I grew up that way. Come on. So, we went up, we spent the weekend. It was great. But it almost wasn't. The Thursday night before we left, we had decided that the stuff that really wasn't immediately needed, we were going to stick in Speedy's car. And because he had to work the next day, so he was just going to meet us up there. And we stuck the stuff that we were going to take up there with us. We stuck that in Twiggy's car. And then she and the kids and I would just go up ahead of Speedy. And then we would all just, hang out for the weekend. And so that Thursday night, we're packing up. We're trying to figure out what we need, what we don't, what have you. And we get Speedy's car all packed up. We get Twiggy's car all packed up, except for like a few little odds and ends that we shove in a backpack or something. And we had kept telling Mr. Rowdy, the 12-year-old, we would both remind him, like, you know, because he would get stuff done, and then he'd be like, what am I forgetting? What am I forgetting? And we're like, did you grab your meds? Oh, yeah, I got that. It's okay. Well, we believed him. And pausing that for a second, I must tell you that Mr. Rowdy had some behavioral issues. And there are certain tics that he couldn't help, and there were a lot that he could. And the ones that, you know, the ones that he could help, like, we knew when he was being deliberately just annoying and obnoxious, and the ones that he couldn't help, you know, we knew that too. Like, you spend enough time around somebody, you can figure it out pretty quickly. So, especially with him, because he's a bad liar. He really is. Anyway, so Friday morning, we get everything done, last little odds and ends that we got to do around the house, make sure everything's off and, you know, locked up tight, what have you, because we're going to be gone all weekend. So we get in the car and we leave. About an hour and a half into the trip, the baby's asleep, and Mr. Rowdy, during the course of our trip, you know, he's perfectly fine. He's reading books, he's playing video games on his handheld, whatever. And an hour and a half in, he looks up very suddenly and says, Mom, Auntie, because he called me Auntie, which I'm totally fine with that. And we're like, yeah, bud, what's the matter? And he says, I have a problem. And we're thinking something small like, oh, he's got to go and use the water closet, or he's about to get car sick or something, like something normal. And Twiggy says, well, what's the matter, son? And he says, I forgot my medication. What? And I'm just sitting there like, oh boy, it's going to be a long weekend. So I have a pretty deep well of patience when it comes to children, because, I mean, they're children. And I had a very not good upbringing myself. So I understand that being an asshole to a child is not the way to go. So I try to not do that, right? So when he tells us this, I'm just kind of glancing over at Twiggy like, uh-oh, you know, and Twiggy, she's just kind of driving, and I watched her hands just kind of flex and kind of not flex. She's just kind of just doing this on the steering wheel like, oh my goodness, like, what? She says, son, I warned you. I shouldn't say I warned you. She says, I reminded you over and over again, as did Auntie, that you need to take your medication with you. And you had told us that you had it. Oh, I know I did, but I thought I did, and I didn't, and I'm sorry, and all this. And she's just kind of looking out the window like, all right, kid. All right. So we just kind of look at each other like, what do we do, you know? And so she says, okay, son, you get no caffeinated anything. The only sugar you're going to get is maybe a Sprite. One Sprite at like lunchtime. And that's it. You are not going to get anything with caffeine at all. And the sugar, it's going to be almost non-existent for you, pal. And definitely nothing after dinner, because we're not going to do this. And because the theory was, if we gave it to him like right around lunchtime, he'd have the rest of the day to burn it off outside, weather permitting. And thankfully, we were blessed with some amazing weather that whole weekend. We didn't have any rain at all. It was wonderful. And sunshine, it was beautiful out. So we knew that he would have plenty of time. And then right around dinner time, you know, it was water or whatever, non-caffeinated, non-sugar anything. So he could go to bed at a decent hour and give us adults a break. So he's like, okay, that's fine, whatever. So we get up there, and when we start unloading Twiggy's car, she's like, oh yeah, let me go and unlock the door so we can just start bringing stuff in. And that way it's not sitting outside. We can just, you know, just bring it straight in. And so she was going to go in. We had already planned this out, that she was going to go in, get this fire started in the wood stove. And then, because it was starting to get a little chilly out. And she'd keep an eye on the 2-year-old while Mr. Rowdy and I got things set up, you know, brought it in from the car, and that way she could get things like the way she wanted it done. It was no big deal. We had done this before, so I was totally fine with having that set up again, and my glasses are discombobulated. Okay, anyway, sorry, it was distracting. So we get up there, and she goes to unlock the door, and as she's coming in, she screams and runs back outside, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there's somebody in the house. Now, there had been a rash of break-ins in that area for a couple weeks, and we knew that there were possibly some issues going to happen, and because Speedy's parents had called her and let her know, hey, you know, there's some issues going on up at the property, just so you're aware, and just to be careful, be vigilant, that kind of thing. Now, we are about 20 minutes out of any civilization, and no cell phone service. This is back in the day when dial-up was still a thing. Cell phones were just barely starting to become popular, and so yeah, she had a cell phone, but it was like you had to pay, I think it was per minute or something like that, and like nights and weekends after 7 p.m. were free, and it's like, this is ridiculous, right? So really puts a date on things, doesn't it? So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you know, if we call 911, we're all going to be dead before anybody gets here to help us. So I'm thinking, okay, I've suddenly ended up in a really terrible horror movie with my friends, and this is not okay. So, and Speedy, he's still back in town. He wasn't even off work yet. So there's no way he can make it up there in 3.5 hours to save us, you know, so like, we are definitely screwed. So she realizes, oh, there's nobody chasing me, and my boys and my friend are all okay. I'm okay. Let me go back in. So she goes back in, and she sees, this is genius. This is absolutely genius. Speedy's parents had decided when this rash of breakouts really started becoming noticeable, and they had gotten news from some of the people that they knew from town up where we were, and they've been going up there for years, and somebody had let them know. And so Speedy's parents had decided, all right, we're going to go up, we're going to set something up to kind of deter possible theft, right? So this is back before Pinterest became a thing, and so I don't know where they got this idea to do this, but it's beautiful. They took a Halloween mask, like one of those big rubber ones that goes over your whole head. They had taken one of those and filled it with newspaper, and they took an old shirt, an old pair of jeans, a pair of boots, even a pair of gloves to make it have hands. And I mean, they really wanted this to be convincing. So they filled it with newspaper and plastic bags and what have you. And they had decided that they were going to take a lawn chair, one of those lounge lawn chairs that you would use for like sunbathing or whatever. And it's about 6 feet long, and it's got the 2 leaves, 1 leaf for your head, 1 leaf for your legs, and you fold it and stash it in the closet when you're not using it. They use one of those, and they put this dummy on this lawn chair, and they stuck it right in the middle of the walkway. So when you open the door, at first all you see is a pair of feet sticking out, and it's like, oh shit, you know. So, which was the reaction that Twiggy had. And so I was like, okay, well, we know this works. So, and we did implement this a couple of times when we would go into town for stuff, but, you know, just to get out of the house for a minute and go and explore or whatever. Anyway, so that first day, she realizes, oh, wait, oh, this is just a dummy. So, Mr. Rowdy is standing there like, there's no way I'm going in there. You can't make me. Forget it. It's not going to happen. So we had to take this doll, fold it all up, and put it in what used to be the bathroom. And there, I mean, it's a full bathroom, like sink, toilet, tub, whatever, but there's no running water, so it was just kind of there. And we put it in the tub. We put a couple of things over to hide it because Twiggy's son, Mr. Rowdy, was absolutely terrified of this thing. So, which I don't fault the kid, you know, like, poor guy. So we get everything settled, and Mr. Rowdy's just being just obnoxious the whole weekend, and like behavior that we know he could help. So we're like, okay, keep it up. Just keep it up, kid. So Twiggy is really starting to lose her patience. And we ended up sending him to bed like right after dinner because he became too much of a handful. So after the boys are in bed, Twiggy's husband finally is able to get up there, and we're all hanging out, smoking cigarettes on the porch and talking and enjoying the night air and having a beer. And at one point, Twiggy had told Speedy, like, hey, so Mr. Rowdy forgot his meds, and it's going to be a long weekend. I just want you to know. And Speedy was just like, oh, great. We kept warning him that he's not going to have a good weekend if he forgets his meds, because it's, we're not going to get along. And I mean, they're not abusive parents, right? Like Speedy was kind of a jerk, but toward the end, but like they were never abusive. And it was just going to be a lot of raised voices and what have you, and thankfully it didn't get to that point. I'll go into why in a second, but Speedy was just kind of like, oh great, what are we gonna do? And Twiggy's like, no, it's okay, we'll just monitor, like, he's not to have anything overly sugary and no caffeine after, a certain time, whatever. And he's like, okay, well that's fair. We can work with that. That's not a problem. And so Saturday morning we get up and we're doing stuff, and we realized, oh shoot, we forgot to grab X, Y, and Z from the store. So Speedy offers to go get it. And he had asked Mr. Rowdy if he wanted to go, and he said no. So Mr. Rowdy had wanted to take the four-wheeler out, and Twiggy and I were like, we were just sitting there working on, she was writing letters to some friends of ours, and I'm writing in my journal, and just, different whatever. And Mr. Rowdy had asked Twiggy if he could take the four-wheeler out, and she's like, yeah, go. Just get out of my hair for a minute. I'm so frustrated with you right now. You just need to go. Go play. Go be a kid. Just go. Scram. So he's out and he's running the four-wheeler. He knows how to operate it. He knows how to be responsible. He knows his boundaries and all that. So she knew she could trust him. With as obnoxious as he was, that was the only outlet that she could give him where we wouldn't kill each other. So I was like, okay, that's great. Whatever. Go. Hang out. Just scram, And so she and I we go back to writing and that, and at one point she looks up and she's got this bird-fed cat smile on her face, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, what is this girl planning? Because she says, hey Ree, do you want to get Mr. Rowdy back for being an obnoxious little jerk this whole weekend? And I said, well, I mean, what do you have in mind, woman? Because I don't know if I want to jump on this plan of yours, because I don't know if I like that smile you have. And she says, well, he's afraid of the Wolfman doll. And I said, yeah. And she says, you're tired of his bullshit. You're tired of it. Don't you dare lie to me and tell you you're fine. I'm like, he's getting a little on my nerves, yeah. And she's all right. So here's what we're going to do. So we took the Wolfman doll out of the tub. We put it in his room on his bed. There was a set of bunk beds in his room, and he always slept on the top bunk. And we had been bugging him all weekend, like, come on, dude, go unpack. And Twiggy has this thing, and I kind of adopted this in my own little world too. Over the last 15 years, I've become accustomed to, if I'm staying somewhere, I tend to try to use like the drawers or whatever. I'm not living in a suitcase, right? So, I call it living like a refugee. So, we had been telling him, use the drawers while you're here. That way you're not living out of your suitcase, and it's not this big mess when we get ready to leave. It's, it's nice and organized. And he had dirty clothes strewn all over the place. He had shoes. It was a nightmare in there. It was just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So we've been telling him, you need to clean your room. He wouldn't do it. So while he's out running the four-wheeler, we put this doll in there. We made it look like the doll was sleeping in his bed. We put, a blanket on him. We even took his shoes off, and and we put the doll's arm like this, and we put a little stuffed animal, like a stuffed bear, I think it was, under the doll's arm, make it look like he was cuddling up with a stuffed animal. It was really cute. I mean, I thought it was pretty genius, right? So we get done, and we're giggling our butts off the whole time. Well, by this point, Speedy comes in, and he's like, what are you girls laughing about? What is so funny? What did you do? You know, and we're like, what? So Twiggy pulls him aside, and she fills him in on what's been going on, that Mr. Rowdy's been absolutely just a handful, and he's getting on our nerves and this and that, and deliberately trying to make it look like, you know, he can't help the behavior that he's doing. It's like, yeah, buddy, we know you can. Come on, stop it. So we told him what we did, and Speedy starts laughing. He's like, oh, that's beautiful, ladies. That is so beautiful. I'm so proud of you. Not long after that, Mr. Rowdy comes in, and he's like, hey, yeah, so what's for lunch? And we're like, well, we're going to get lunch started. Why don't you go clean your room while we get lunch started? And he's like, oh, man, typical 12-year-old, right? So, and I said to him, I said, I'll tell you what. I said, if you go clean your room and do it without any pushback, when we go into town later, I'll play a round of, I think it was like Pac-Man or something like that. I don't remember. It was one of those arcade games, like the old-timey from the 80s. And so I'll play a round or two with you. How about that? And he's like, oh, yeah, sure, that'd be great. So we go and Twiggy and I go sit back down on the table, and she's finishing up her letter. And I made it look like I was going to finish writing in my journal. And I really was, but I heard him go to the door. I heard Mr. Rowdy go to the door, and as soon as I heard him open it, I started counting backwards from 5. I was whispering this so he couldn't hear me. And I got to 1. I didn't even get 1 out of my mouth, and I hear this scream. Twiggy and I fell out laughing because all you see is him running down the hall, out the door, halfway down the drive, screaming all sorts of colorful language. And he's like, you guys suck. You really suck. I hate you both. And blah, blah. It was just, wow. You'd think he was a little upset. So Twiggy and Speedy and I are just losing our minds. We are laughing. And Mr. Rowdy, he's just like, how could you do that to me? How could you? And Twiggy, without even flinching, without even thinking about what she's going to say, she says, that's what you get, son. Now go clean your room.